Well, thank you very much for making the time, Jack, to talk about AIME.
It's an absolute pleasure. I'm pumped to be here.
Fantastic, and some of that partnership as you've grown, some of it with SBA and a lot of it with other organisations and supporters. I thought I'd kick it off by asking you, what do you see as AIME's greatest impact today?
The numbers have got to be it. So, 15,000 plus Indigenous kids that have literally closed the educational gap, left high school, then moved into university employment or training at parity is exactly the reason why I started it. I wanted to see Indigenous inequality done and dusted, and wanted to do everything that I could to try and change the face of this country. So I think the numbers of kids, and then there's been 5,000 plus university students volunteer, which is the biggest volunteer movement of university students in Australian history. So to know that my peers actually, if we could learn how to ask them in the right way, we could get them. And the first 3 or 4 years I couldn't work that out. So to see both of those things turn around, kids, which I couldn't quite work out how to crack early doors, and then university students, and then to see how much it matters to people now is the big impact, I think.
And if you think back to the 2 or 3 turning points in AIME's evolution over the years, the moments where there was a lot of change, some situation, a certain event, what were they, and how did you steer AIME successfully through those moments?
I basically got given this scholarship, which I said, look, if you give this scholarship to me to go to university, I want to put back, and if I do anything in my life, I want to do something big. And it was a good line, so I got the scholarship, but then I entered university and the table sort of flipped. I was like, all right, well, I've been this naughty kid been given some responsibility. I better try and pay this back and do something with it. And then as karma would have it, I decided to work with kids and had them do the same thing to me that I was doing to everyone else as a kid. So that was probably, that scholarship was a big one to get that shot. Landing in Paul's College at Sydney University, which is the oldest university in Australia. One of the most traditional residential colleges in the country. So you had these students that have 5 nights a week are wearing academic gowns, tie, suit jacket, the whole thing. And so we were there. I turned up and I'd only ever eaten on the floor. Mum's an artist, we never had a dining room table. She painted on that. And suddenly we're asking to wear a tie. I'm like, what the heck is this thing? And I learned about privilege. I've got angry and blame privilege. And I thought these guys are the ones to blame for inequality and for the challenges. It's easy, I've worked out the challenge with capitalism. It's just the people that win from it. And I as a probably 19, 20-year-old had to learn how to overcome that and overcome that chip on my shoulder. So I think they were probably 2 of the big levers early doors before, just as AIME's inception was starting. At 19, I started it with a school down the road in Redfern, and I started it with 3 or 4 other university students who helped me out. They were people that answered that cry to try and, I started to paint a bit of a vision, but without them coming to the table, I wouldn't have been able to document it into our awesome Microsoft Word 8-page piece that we took down to the deputy principal. So I think that'd be 3 significant levers, which are not the real big headline pieces that that come afterwards, but getting a shot and being given responsibility as a naughty kid. Then the second one would have been landing in privilege and learning to take people not for where they've come from, but for who they are and where they can go. And then I think the third one was learning that if you're brave enough to share a vision and to speak it out loud, there is the off chance that someone else will hear it. And without those people hearing it, you're just by yourself and you're standing in the woods alone. So if you can say it loud enough, people are in the right way, people might come. And those 4 university students that helped start it in 2005, really helped kickstart the legacy. And I've just sort of stayed the course after that.
And as you went through that growth phase, so many startup social purpose organisations just don't make it over that. Incredible founder, a lot of energy to begin with, a lot of supporters, and they're not able to build out the organisation as it grows. How did you take AIME through that part of the journey?
You kind of try your best to not scream whilst desperately hoping that someone's going to answer the call. And I knew this thing worked. I'd been in schools and I'd seen this mentoring model of university kids working with Indigenous high school students, people with privilege and power, working with people who at that stage didn't have as much power as they should in our society. And and having a structured curriculum to what we were doing, it made sense, it worked, like everyone loved the energy of it. But I had to learn how to communicate that, but then there's this secondary thing that happens with funding and supporting projects, that you have to survive for 6 years. You know, almost every major funding grant over $100,000 is like, are you national? Have you been running for 6 years? What's your evidence base? Now, how do you get an evidence base and survive 6 years unless you have any funding? So that missing gap of like startup equity, of being able to give people a chance to just put some food on the table. Like, I'd borrowed 5 to 10 grand off my housemate, and I got really sick in the middle of 2007. And if it wasn't for Murray Bashir giving me one contract, which was a 60,000 Oz job, that was critical. And then, I don't say it because you're sitting here, I say it because it's true. The social ventures model was perfect for us. It was like the little brother coming in off the street being like, but you've done stuff before, like, help us, you know, and you've got a reputation. And Duncan Peppercorn and Michael Trail and Lisa Cotton and, you know, Jano and Chris Boys, they, all in their own way, said, we're gonna not only back Jack, but we believe that the model can work. And so what they did is they sat down with me and wrote a strategic plan. I didn't know how to spell strategic plan, you know, and I thought it was magic when the SVA consulting group suddenly spat out these decks of slides. I was like, that currency, when you don't know the language of the world you're entering into, I was slowly learning, and I had a natural instinct for the language of working with kids. But that language of a boardroom, of those decks, of those slides, of talking to funders about investment and return on investment and all those other garble, which is just, until you know what it is, you can't call it garble. You know, people use it for power and they keep that power from you. What the SVA family helped me do was translate what we were trying to do, or we were doing, into a language that could be understood by the audience that had the power and had the influence. And then they gave me access really bravely, you know, and they did that at that time for 7 other ventures that they were really backing to scale over a 5-year period. And the final one is they gave us 5 years. Like, what an unbelievable gift for someone at that point. It was like 2008, 2009. We knew for 5 years we'd be able to run. We've done the strategic plan, and the numbers then start to become real. So how you get that brave early adopter outside to look at something new, and what we did have was a scalable model and a cost-effective model, and I think that's a little bit rare as well to have that design.
And building on that, what advice would you have for the SVAs of the world, other organisations that are also supporting startups in the social purpose space, to do their job even more effectively?
Yeah, well, I think the best model that SVA's ever had was when we started. I think eight people in the portfolio actually makes the whole market chase that. So if you have values which are really clearly defined, we're going to support, you know, 8 or 10 groups a year who are scalable, who can make an impact, and who can take the challenge that they're working against off the table. We have to have endpoint destinations for what we're trying to do. Otherwise, what's the point? You know, we could feel really great. We could wear AIME hoodies. We can make a designed thing. But if Indigenous inequality doesn't stop, then we shouldn't have done anything. Mm-hmm. It doesn't end the game. It doesn't end what you're trying to do. So unless you have a solution, then at that scale of that family for an SVA of the world, like, you better believe you should have the commitment and ask of people to have that commitment that they end what they're trying to start. We have to have numbers and metrics that track the impact, and we can quantifiably show whether our intent actually makes a difference. Otherwise, to everyone who wants to do a good thing, don't do it. Find a way that you're actually going to change something, or sit on the sideline and support the people that are.
Now looking back on the whole evolution of AIME, what 2 or 3 insights would you have for someone who's starting out, starting up a social purpose organisation and very importantly, looking to get to scale?
The first one has come relatively late to me, that it's about knowing yourself first. I think identity and your sense of why you're in this, of who you are, of what you think your purpose is on the planet, and why you believe that completely aligns with your value systems. If that doesn't check out, you'll get found out. So I think it's got to start internally, including that really hard question, which is someone else already doing this? And if someone else is already doing this, why don't I go and work for them? That's number one. If you get past that identity piece, find a lawyer and find someone you know who's a lawyer and ask them to help you. then get your board of directors of people that can be your point of influence. And with those, I'd say try and do a cross-section of the market of what you're looking for, and make sure they're your team. They're not there to advise, they're there to work with you. And I think I'd say strategy starts with that identity introspection. So when you're doing those questioning, why am I doing this? Who am I? What's my purpose here? What do I actually want to achieve with my time and energy if I build this organisation? That's got to be number one before you even go to the lawyer, before you even go to your board of directors, because it's not fair on everybody else, because people will back a passionate person, but it's dangerous. So using that passion with your intellect, because otherwise it's unfair on the people that you're going to try and work with, because you're doing them a disservice if you don't know what the end game destination is.
In your book, The Mentor, you talk about some tough times that you went through personally. Did you ever think about giving up? And what got you through those moments of self-doubt if you were feeling them?
When push comes to shove, I will keep getting up every single day because of the injustice of what's happened here, and the injustice of what happens to people who are born into inequality. It's a way to keep getting up. So I'd say there's been moments where I've been at almost breaking point and beyond zero in the petrol tank. But if I can get a bit of space to go away and look back in on it, I realise that's where I want to be again.
And having achieved all of this and passed through all those moments, a year ago, you've made the decision to take the next great leap into the unknown, set those targets even higher with this global move, taking the mentoring approach beyond Australia. Could you tell me a bit about that global vision you have?
I've always wanted to do this thing around the world. I believe that that Australians can play ball on a big level. I believe that we can lead with ideas, we can lead on the educational front, we can lead with storytelling, and I think AIME's really special. I actually think what we've built here is pretty unique as an organisation of human beings, and our values and all of the different DNA that make us special, and people love being a part of it. So why shouldn't that opportunity be given to people in South America or in North America or in Africa or in Europe or in Asia? So it was about me standing up and being brave enough to say, no, I think this is what's right. My job as an educator is to open these kids' minds up. That's my worldview. There's lots of other worldviews of how people look at education, but I think my job is to say to any kid that we work with, I want you to understand that the world is limitless, that your potential is limitless, and that your imagination is limitless. And that's going to be my gift to you.
And now that you're a year into putting that into operation globally, what are the learnings and the challenges in taking that essence of AIME overseas?
Yeah, I think the learning happened last year, so we had to build a bit more of a malleable model. So we've flipped our program content from being textbook based and having a presenter up the front of our university workshops, our university sessions, to them being run by a television show, which I host and actually interview people who are mentors speaking truth. So we've had famous people from big Netflix shows. We've had Rory Stein, who was Mandela's chief bodyguard, who 15, 20 years before working with Nelson was a member of the South African police force defending apartheid. So all of these incredible stories. And then off the back of those stories, the mentors then connect with the kids and they have a conversation about the wisdom from that episode. In the last 20 minutes of every 1 hour block, we do a thing called Failure Time, which is basically our Acropolis. And I think that's probably been our, to date, AIME TV and Failure Time have been our cleverest design principles. Because what it means now is it can be completely localised. If you're in Kalgoorlie, Failure Time is 6 to 7 stations where kids get to rotate around for 3 to 5 minutes. They do it for 20 to 25 minutes and they fail at something they've never done before, or they fail harder at something they've done before. So in Kalgoorlie, you could have a local elder teaching the local language. And then the next station could be someone teaching weaving or traditional dance. Then the next station could be a Justin Bieber dance. And then the next station could be finger painting. And the next one can be learning about ancient Greek mythology through the stars by an astronomy student. And so these kids get to have that Acropolis experience. They get to see the whole world, but it's grounded in their local identity, which is, it's the only way AIME works. If we open up kids' worlds and they can connect with education, but in parallel, they see their identity as a source of strength. And that first piece of advice, which is to know yourself. So we spend so much time on the kids getting to know themselves, and then around the morality and ethics of their lifestyles and operating as a human being on planet Earth.
Finally, looking back, what do you wish someone had told you as you were starting off the AIME experience?
I wish I got told to under-promise and over-deliver. I wish that was the first thing that someone told me, because we can't stop time from moving, we can't stop the clock from ticking, but we can learn how to position ourselves within that world of time. And when you start to scale your human interactions, your capacity to manage it and interact with a huge web of humans is really possible if you can under-promise and over-deliver. And so I think that has been one of the key lessons which I would have liked to have learned earlier.
Very good.
Oh, good.
Great
High five,
answer.
man.
Cheers, man.
See you later.